Hey everybody, this is Robert Burke, and today we're going to walk you through the Silver River, a new 4X game that we are putting out. It's kind of an open sandbox game, so we're going to walk through a turn, we're going to walk through all the mechanics, we're going to go over all the special rules, basically anything you would need to know to play the Silver River will be in this video if you do not like to read rule books. Now, we recommend you still read the rule book, but hopefully you won't need to if you watch this video. So before we start, the first thing I want to say is the rule book. So on page 4 is going to be the setup. So this will walk you through step by step setting up the game based on the number of players you are playing with, right? From 2 all the way up to 5 players if you have the deluxe edition. The solo game rules are in the back of the rule book. I will not be covering them in this video. We'll do another video. This video is meant for multiplayer games. So follow the setup to get your game set up, and we're going to pick it up from there. All right, so once you're all set up, I'm going to show you the very back page of the rule book here. So the back page is a quick reference guide. And this is going to walk you through the 4 phases of an age in the Silver River. So each age has 4 different phases, really 3 phases. The last phase is just when the final player passes. That's just says the age is over, is the 4th phase. So that's really not even a phase, just kind of an indicator. But we're going to go through the 3 phases of an age. You're going to play 4 ages in a game. At the end of the 4th age, whoever has the most victory points is the winner. So we're going to start with this first phase called production, the production phase. So production is going to happen here on the production board. I am playing the reptilians, and this is my production board. So every other race, that every player in the game is going to have their own production board. So this is very important. To start the game, you're going to have 8 production on your raw production section of your production board. So for example, 2, 4, 6, 8. I've got 8 right there. So this is important in the first age. This is part of the setup. Make sure you don't forget that. This 8 starting production only happens in age 1, and it's really just to jumpstart the game for you so you have something to work with. All right. During every production phase, what's going to happen is you're going to look at the board and you're going to count your population. So these cubes that you have, you're going to be using a lot during the game, and they mean different things depending on where they're located. These are just cubes in my supply available for me to use. Cubes up here on the domestic investment track are just trackers. They let me track my domestic investment for my civilization. Also, I've got, there's a score track, so it could be a score marker for you as well. When they're on the planet, on the board, it represents a unit of population. So on this home planet, which I know it's my home planet because it's got my symbol on it that matches my race's symbol, I've got 5 units of population on that homeworld planet. When it's on your board, in this section that says raw production, it represents raw production. That's the raw stuff that you need to transform your civilization. But to use it, you first have to allocate it to these different areas on your production board. And we'll talk about that. That's going to be phase 2, the governing phase. But to produce, it's very simple. I'm going to count all the population on all the planets I control. In age 1, you're only going to have 5. So it's very simple. You're going to take 5 production cubes from your supply, and you add them to the raw production section of your production board. So to start the game, every player is going to have 13 in the first age. Now, how do you ramp your raw production up? By building out your civilization. So there's multiple ways you can increase your raw production output for the next age. The most important is increasing your population. So you can colonize planets. When you colonize a planet, it means you are adding just 1 cube to a new planet where you do not exist. You can actually populate a planet with another player. That is completely legal and allowed in the game. You are considered cohabitating. Now, they might not like it. They might try to bomb you off their planet, but there's nothing that says you can't live in peace. Every cube you get on the board is going to give you 1 production for the next age. Another way you can ramp up production are with trade stations. So your trade stations are going to come in a matching color. They're going to look like this. And you build these in an empty sector, which is a sector that has no planets, not a nebula. You cannot build one in a nebula, and you cannot build one in Sagittarius A, and you cannot build one where there's a planet. It's got to be an empty sector. And you've got to have a fleet, one of your fleets present there. So once you build a trade station, what the trade station is going to do, it's going to give you 1 production for every adjacent sector that's populated. So in this case, my home planet's populated, so it would give me 1 extra production that I would add to my raw production section of my board during that production phase. Another important rule is it doesn't matter who is populating that sector. So if the red player had colonized this planet, and I have a trade station here, now instead of getting 1 extra raw production during the production phase, I'm going to get 2 because there are 2 adjacent sectors that have population. It could be any amount of population and you're going to get a bonus of +1 production. Not an explore marker, not a ship. If another player had a trade station next door to you, you don't get it for that. You do not get it if another player had one of their wonders, for example, on one of their planets. That doesn't count. So if this wasn't there, but they had built a wonder and they had been bombed off, for example, you don't get a production for the wonder. It's got to be a population. As long as there's 1 population, you're going to get an extra production for every adjacent trade station that you have. So that's the second way you're really going to build up your raw production. And it's important to maximize how much raw production you get because that's what's going to give you actions every single age. It's going to drive how much you can do. There are some other things that will give you extra production as well. If you win a title, and we'll talk about this later, if you win the Galactic Leader card, you're going to gain 2 political production. So it doesn't go on the raw, it goes on the political section. And you'll gain 2 political every production phase if you have this title. There's another one, the Trade Leader card, will give you 1 production immediately, raw production, when you win the Trade Leader title. And it will give you 1 production for every trade station that you have during every production phase. So to gain anything from the Trade Leader, you need to have built trade stations. If I had 1 trade station only and I won this Trade Leader card, I would get 1 raw production immediately and then 1 every age that I have a trade station. If I build all my trade stations and had 4 on the board, then this card would give me 4 extra production during that production phase. So that's another way you can ramp up your production output. There is also a technology, subterranean colonization. You'll see it gives you +1 raw production during the production phase. So if you've built this on your tech board, you will add 1 raw production during the production phase. So that's another way to get an extra production. Then there's a race called the Yahyel. They're all about trading. They have some special abilities that allows them to gain production as well. So production, the first phase, it's simultaneous. Every player does it at exactly the same time. They count the population on their home worlds. They count the bonus production they're going to get from trade stations. They count an extra production if they've got subterranean colonization. They include any production that they're going to get from any title cards that they hold. And the last thing is if you hold a nebula, if you're the only fleet in a nebula, you get +2 technology production during the production phase as well. So once everybody counts up how much production they have, they add it to their player board. Once everybody's done that, the phase is over, and we move on to phase 2, the governing phase. All right, phase 2, the governing phase. I've got my player board set up kind of like how it may look at the end of a production round. Maybe I got 2 political production because I am the galactic leader. This is how much raw production I've earned from my population and my trade stations, technologies, etc. And maybe I had some leftover production here. Anytime you end an age and have production remaining that you haven't spent, you move it down below this line. You can still use that production, but you can't move it. So that's the important thing to remember. So during the governing phase, the first thing you're going to do is every player has a player screen. You're going to put your player screen up to cover your board. And that's important because you don't want to see, you don't want other players to see what you're doing, right? So you're kind of hide yourself behind your player screen. And now you're going to just allocate your raw production and turn it into the type of production you want to use that age. There's civilization production. This lets you colonize new planets, populate worlds that you've already colonized. Also allows you to build trade stations. Military lets you activate a fleet to move it and explore or attack or bombard. And also with military, you can also build ships as well. With technology, production is the production you need to spend to increase your technology research and gain new abilities. So technology is important as you go from age to age. And finally, political production lets you earn titles. You can call elections and vote with that production to earn titles. You can build wonders, which give you special bonuses as well and victory points at the end of the game. And also you can use it to draw tactics cards, which are special cards that kind of break the rules and give you situational advantages and bonuses. So these can be very powerful as well. And you spend political production to buy them. So the governing phase, we're going to go over all the different actions that you can do. But for the governing phase, what you're going to do is you're going to just move this production to what you want to do that age based on the actions you want to take. I'll go over the actions here shortly, but just for the sake of argument, maybe it looks something like this. So when I take an action, I can pick one type and I can spend all the production of that one type in a single round. And I'll talk about that more in the phase 3 explanation. But the governing phase is basically taking your raw production, allocating it to the areas and converting it into the type of production you want to drive the actions you want to complete for the coming age. When everybody is completed allocating their production in the governing phase, they remove their screens, and then you go to phase 3, the action phase. All right, so phase 3 is the longest phase in an age, and it is the action phase. This is the age where players in order are going to be taking actions in the Silver River, whether they're military or civilization or technology or political actions. So I'm going to walk you through that stage. So the first phase of an age was the production phase. That's where you're adding raw production to your production board in this area of your production board based on how much population you have and your trade stations and other technologies. Then the governing phase, the second phase, is where you're moving that raw production to these 4 different production areas: civilization, military, technology, and political. So the production phase is very important because you're setting yourself up to do the actions. So that's where the governing phase is so important. You're setting your production and allocating it to those areas based on what you want to do that age. So an important thing to remember here is when it's your turn during the action phase, you're going to pick one of these 4 production types: civilization, military, technology, or political, and you're going to do actions of that one type only. So if I pick civilization, I can't do military or technology or political, but I can do as many civilization actions as I can afford. So your player aid is going to list right on it the different kinds of actions you can take based on the type of production. So you'll see political and political, right? The yellow color, political production, drives political actions, which are these yellow actions. Technology is blue, and there's a symbol there as well. You see the technology chip, the silicon chip. So you have that symbol and that color, and that's the technology actions. So military is red and has the battle helmet symbol, and then civilization is the book and it's green. So you'll see that they correspond to the type of actions you can take. So I'm going to go through the first one here, political actions. I'll go through each of these and show you what you do for each of these actions. And each of these are going to be important to building your empire and, most importantly, scoring victory points. So you can see here I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 political production to work with. So let's walk through one turn of spending that political production. All right, the first thing I can do with political production, you'll see here it says call for elections. Elect a new title holder. Each title may be voted on once per age. So these are the titles in the game. There are 3 of them, and these are going to give you an immediate benefit if you win it, and you're going to keep that title until somebody else calls an election and wins it from you. So the rule is you can't call an election for any title that's been won in that same age. So you're going to get an immediate benefit, and you're going to get the benefit during the next production phase at a minimum. However, if you get this earlier in the game and nobody takes it from you, nobody calls an election for it, you get the benefit maybe possibly the whole game. There are also some personal objectives that tie to having titles. So if you have that political personal objective, it's important to win these for victory points as well. So you'll see there's Galactic Leader. So this will immediately give you 2 political production when you win this title, and will also give you 2 political production every age during the production phase. So that means during the production phase, and instead of adding 2 production to raw production, you would add it directly to political production if you're the Galactic Leader. Also, and probably more importantly, it also breaks all ties on all votes. So whenever there's a vote, you're going to vote with a blind bid. So you're going to take political production in your hand secretly, and everybody's going to reveal simultaneously. Whoever has the most votes wins, right? So if you're the Galactic Leader and there's a tie, you get to decide who wins that vote. Even if you're not one of the tied players, you're in charge. You're the boss, so to speak. And one note, these components are just mock-up components from the factory. It is final art and graphic design, but it's not final materials. You'll see some of the cuts aren't quite right. So it's not the final production copy. It's a pre-production copy that we're looking at here. Trade Leader will give you 1 raw production for each trade station that you control immediately, and 1 for each trade station during the production phase as well. So clearly this is better. The more trade stations you have built, the better this is. If you have all 4 of your trade stations built and you win the Trade Leader title, you'll get 4 raw production immediately, and 4 bonus raw production every age you hold this title. We saw Galactic Leader, and then Spy Master. Spy Master gets you a tactics card immediately, and then you'll gain a tactics card for free during the production phase every age that you are the Spy Master. So, important thing to note, when you call an election, you have to spend 1 political production. So it comes off your production board. It's got to come from this political production section, and it goes away. Now I can call a vote. So if I only spend 1, I have to pick which one I'm going to vote on. I could do multiples. I could spend 3, 1 for each, and call a vote on all 3 of these. But remember, even if I win or lose, it doesn't matter. I'm going to lose that 1 production it cost me just to call the vote. After I call the vote, every player, even if they've passed, can participate in the vote. And I already showed you how to do that by doing a blind bid. You secretly put a number of political production in your hand and everybody votes on the count of 3. You can vote for somebody else by pointing at them and revealing, but whoever wins, if you voted for yourself and you win, you lose that production. If I voted for somebody else and they win by pointing, you still lose your political production. If the player you vote for, including yourself, does not win, then you get your production back and it goes back on your political production board, except for the one that it costs to call the election, of course. So that's how call for election works as a political action. So you want to make sure you can reserve enough if you're going to call an election. You kind of want to make sure you can win that election. Also, there are some tactics cards that will add votes, so that's something you need to keep in mind as well. All right. The second thing is to build a wonder. Build a wonder on any planet you control. So let's say I called an election and I spent 1. So I'm down 1, I'm down to 8. Let's say I lost 2 to win a title. Let's say I won myself the Spy Master. So I gain the Spy Master. I gain another tactics card as soon as that happens. So I'm going to grab another tactics card here. I gain that. And I'm going to get a tactics card every production phase during every future age as long as I hold that Spy Master card. Now, I've still got, even after winning it, spending 2 production to win the vote, spending 1 to call the vote, I've got 5 left. The next thing I'm going to do is build a wonder. All right, so building a wonder costs 4. So I can spend 4. And that allows me to build any one of the wonders on my player board and place it on a planet I control. So planet I control, that's very important to know. It's got to be a planet where you have the majority population. All right, that means that you control it. So, for example, if I was sharing and cohabitating this planet with another race, I could still build a wonder there, because a tie is, for the purposes of building wonders and scoring at the end of the game, it's considered controlling it. However, if I was the minority there, if Red had 2 and I only had 1, I could not build a wonder there because I do not control it. I'm not equal or more. I don't have equal to or more than the other population. So to build the wonder, and the wonders are listed right on your sheet as well. This is where they're kept. The first 2 every player has. So any player can build an orbital shipyard. And that says when I build ships at a location where an orbital shipyard exists, I can build 5 ships for every 3 military production that I spend. So usually ships cost 1 military production for 1 ship. This allows me to spend 3 and gain 5 ships. So it makes my shipbuilding much more efficient. The second one is a Pleasure Dome Wonder, and that looks like this, just like it does on the board. So the Pleasure Dome Wonder you place on a planet that you control, and that planet can no longer be attacked. It cannot be bombarded. So you're basically locking it down and protecting it for the rest of the game. The last one is advanced scanners for the Martians here. So every single race has a different wonder, and you're going to have to explore these. It's part of the fun of the game. The Yahyel, for example, have the luxury spaceport. That's all about trading. The White Lions have the integrated battle center. This lets them re-roll dice when they're attacking. The insectoids have the deportation center. It lets them spend any resource to remove a cohabitating population from a planet they share. The Nordics have the planetary shields. They can lock down all the planets around this wonder where they cannot be bombed by other races. Now, of course, these wonders can be destroyed except for the Pleasure Dome. Once you build that, it's protected. But the orbital shipyard and the racial wonders, this one and this one, can be destroyed. If you destroy a wonder, the player who owned the wonder immediately gets 4 military production. The population is not happy and they are ready for war. So that's something you want to keep in mind as well. There is a special public objective where you will score points for destroying a wonder. So that's something that could or could not be in the game, depending on if that card is in play. So building a wonder, I spent my 4 production. I'm going to build this. I'm going to build my racial wonder, and I'm going to put it right on a planet I control, and that's how you build wonders. Very simple, very easy. So I don't have enough left. I only have 1 remaining. However, there's another action I could do. Now, I could do this multiple times. Like if I had 8 political production, I could have spent 4 of it and built 2 of my wonders. You're only limited by how much production you have. And it's important to be efficient. And you really do want to try to spend as much as you can in one shot. You don't have to. Anything that remains here will stay until the next turn, and you can use it the next turn. So you don't have to spend it all. But if you do spend it all, you may pass earlier than other players. And if you pass earlier than other players, that benefits you on the domestic investment track. And we'll talk about that later. So the last thing, just to show you, even though I can't afford to do it, I'm going to show you what it is. It's draw tactics cards. So for a tactics action, it lets me draw 2 tactics cards. I get to keep 1 and discard 1. This costs 2. I only have 1, so I can't do it, but to just show you how it would work, I would take the tactics deck. I would spend 2 if I had to. I would take 2 off my political production board and into my supply, and then I would take the top 2 tactics cards off the tactics deck and look at them, and now I have 2, population boom and blockade. I decide which one I want. I'm going to take population boom, I put it in my tactics deck, and the other one is discarded. So you get a little bit better, you're not just drawing blind, you have some choice when you take that tactics action. And again, you can do multiple tactics actions at once. So let's say I had 6 political production. I could spend all 6. Then I would draw 6 tactics cards and keep 3 of them. So that really increases your chances of finding a card, a specific card you might be looking for, depending on what you're trying to accomplish that age. It's an important thing to remember. You're really trying to balance your spending, balance the way you're spending your production with what you need to do, trying to be efficient to score points on the domestic investment track at the end of the game as well. So that's the political production. You know, all the things you can do there. You can call for elections, you can draw tactics cards, and you can build wonders. Next is technology production. So this is very a simple thing. So technology production, it just lets you research civilization and military technologies, and that's it. So the technology board looks like this. It's got 4 slots on the top with a green line and 4 slots on the bottom with a red line. The slots on top are civilization technology slots, and the bottom are military technology slots. These 2 are independent. So to build a level 3 civilization technology, I would have built a level 1 and a level 2 civilization technology first before I can build a level 3. So right on the back of the technology cards, you'll see the civilization is labeled civilization, and it's got the green color on the top, and it tells you what level right on the back here. The flag is the player color, so every player gets their own deck of these, and that helps you mostly during cleanup to collect the cards and put them in the right spot. On the front of the cards, this is key as well, the cost is on the bottom right of the card. So for me to build advanced colonization, for example, first of all, this is a level 1 civilization, so I can build it. You do start the game with 4 basic technologies. They're considered level 0. These are actions you can take right out of the gate without building any technology at all. You can do these. They're not as efficient as if you upgraded them, though. So you can see this advanced colonization has a circle symbol, and the colonization, the basic action, has a circle symbol. So any technology that has a symbol can only be placed in an area with that same symbol. All right, so that's very important. I cannot place it anywhere else on my board except here. And it goes the reverse way too. I cannot play anything to that spot except for a card that has a circle. So I could not play one with a triangle there. I could not play one that doesn't have a symbol. It has to have the matching symbol to go there. So if I built advanced colonization, you can see colonization says I could colonize one habitable planet wherever I have a fleet present, and it costs me 3 civilization production to do that. That means when I take this action, it costs me 3 civilization production. That's from this area, right? But we're not colonizing, we're just building the technology. So if I build advanced colonization, I would have to spend technology production. I would take 2 and spend it and just place that right on my board. And now if I colonize a planet, instead of costing me 3, it costs me 2. So it is a more efficient way. So it's better to invest in your technologies, at some point early, so you're not overspending on stuff that you need to do. So that's about it. Now the bottom is another deck. It's a military technology, same exact rules as I just explained for civilization. You have to build the technologies in level order, right? And you have to build the symbols have to go in the slot with that particular symbol. Now you'll also see that the board also has these slots that don't have symbols, but they have a lock. And these are locked. You cannot place any technologies here until you unlock them. And it tells you right on the spot what you need to do to unlock it. Like this one, for example, says explore an empty sector to unlock this slot. So as soon as I explore an empty sector, like over here, you'll see I have a fleet in this sector. If I explored it, I would unlock this slot. So what you want to do is put a cube on the lock, and that reminds you, hey, that's unlocked. I can build a technology there. When you build a technology in these slots, you're going to build one that does not have a symbol. All right, and of course it has to be in the same order. So I've already built the level 1, if you'll remember, because of the advanced colonization, and I spent 2. Maybe I want to build subterranean colonization. That costs 3. I've got 3 left, so I spend these, and I've unlocked this because I've already explored, for sake of example, and that goes down right here. And you can see subterranean colonization is going to give me a bonus raw production during every production phase. And I can treat uninhabitable planets as habitable. So these planets that are marked uninhabitable in red text, I can now colonize those. So that can be kind of important as well. So that's technology. The only other thing to say about technology is your slots are limited, right? So you might be in a situation where you have to cover up a technology that already exists. Like, for example, let's say I had these down and I wanted to play this new efficient workforce card. I'd have to play it on top of another technology. I don't lose the technology underneath, but I cannot access it. All right, so if I had built advanced terraforming, that lets me exceed each planet's maximum population by a capacity of 3. So if I'm at max capacity here on my homeworld of 5, for example, if I had advanced terraforming, I could actually populate more. I could add up to 3 more on that planet because I've got that advanced terraforming. But if I had covered it up, I cannot use it, so I could not exceed that population. Now, if I did exceed it and then covered it up, I'd be fine. You don't take anything away ever. It just means you don't have access to that technology when you want to use it. So that's an important thing to understand. But what you can do at any time, and it says right here on your board, is reconfigure. All right, you can spend 1 production of any type to move your technologies around any way you like. The same rules apply, though. I cannot mix civilization with military or military with civilization. All right, if I'm going to change these, I can't like move it down to the military area because it's a civilization tech. It's got to be on the top row. But I could spend 1 of any type and I could move that back to the top where I want to use the advanced terraforming, for example. And I could, if I had other things covered up, I could spend that 1 production. I could do all of them at one time. So that's technology. All right, so now the next one we're going to go over is military actions. And you'll see there's one here on the player sheet that is labeled in red, and that's activate a fleet. Move a fleet 1 to 0 sectors, then explore, attack, colonize, or do nothing once per turn. So this is red because this is the only thing, the only action in the whole game that you can only do once on a turn. So if I choose to spend 1 to activate a fleet and move, let's show you how that would work over here. So let's say I am going to move this fleet. I can move it 1 space. And then once I do that, I can colonize. I can explore. If it's an empty space, for example, I would be able to explore empty spaces. Or I could attack. If there was another ship, another fleet in here by another race, I could choose to attack that fleet instead of colonize. If I moved in here and there was a fleet here, I could choose to attack that fleet instead of explore. Now, if I choose not to attack and the other player chooses not to attack, we're cool. I can then go ahead and explore for free. And if it was up here and we were cool, I could colonize, even with that other player there. So let's say I colonize. So here's the thing about exploring. Or moving, activating a fleet and moving. When you move and activate a fleet, you get to colonize, you can explore, you can do nothing, or you can attack either another player or a monster. If I choose colonize, I still have to spend from my civilization production based on my cost of my colonization cost. And remember, to start the game, it costs 3 to colonize. But if I've upgraded, which we're going to assume I have, it costs me 2 to colonize. So when I moved in here, I get a free colonization action, which means I get to spend 2 from here to add 1 here, right? And since I've actually upgraded to subterranean colonization as well, I could spend another 2 to place a colonization on that uninhabitable planet that is in that sector. So you'll see I moved my fleet. So again, I spent 1 military, I moved in here. Then I chose to colonize. I had to spend 4 civilization production because it costs 2 for each colonization action that I do. And I get to add 1 colonist here and 1 population here, 1 population here on this uninhabitable world. And I was able to do that because I had the subterranean colonization technology already. So the important thing to remember, you can spend all of just 1 type of production except when you activate a fleet and colonize. If I activate a fleet and move and colonize, then that allows me to spend civilization production. But that's the only action that will allow you to take a secondary action with a different production type. So it makes a lot of sense once you start playing the game, right? Like thematic sense that you can do that. I'm moving my fleet. Oh, there's a planet. I'm going to colonize it. All right. So the other thing that you can do on your turn is with military production is build ships. So you can build X number of ships in any fleet or fleets where no other player's fleet exists. So let's say I wanted to build ships in this fleet right here, and I can look at my fleets at any time because they're my fleets, right? That's my fleet number 2. So you can see my fleet number 2 here on my fleet tracker board. You can see my fleet number 2 has 3 ships. All right. So if I want to build up my fleet number 2, maybe I'm going to build all these ships. Maybe I say I'm going to build 3, 4, 5. So you say I'm going to build 5 ships. You spend 5 military production, and now I can move them up in any order that I want. So let's say I move this, the nebula, the one that we just looked at, that's going to go up 3. So it goes all the way up to 6, and maybe I want to increase these by 2, 4, 5. So now I've just increased the strength of 3 of my fleets by building more ships in those fleets. The ship number is important because that's how many dice you're going to get to roll in a battle. The percentage hit on a roll is dictated by your fleet upgrade. So to start the game, you're going to only hit on circles. So the 6-sided die in the game, 1 circle is on the die, and there's 2 squares, and then there's 3 triangles. So at the start of the game, you're only going to hit if you roll a circle. As you upgrade your technology, this military technology, you will hit on squares, for example. Now I'm hitting 2 out of 6 instead of 1 out of 6. Then you can upgrade so you're hitting on triangles. So now I'm hitting, I'm hitting 50% of the time. After that, you'll start to see crits. So the crits, and I'll find a card for you so you can see what it looks like so I could show you. Here it is. You can see this photon missile is a level 3 military technology. So once I build this, I'm going to hit on circles and I'm going to hit on squares. But if I roll a circle, I do a crit. That's what that explanation point is. That means I do 2 damage every time I roll a circle. So, if I'm fighting another player, they would lose 2 ships instead of 1. If I'm fighting a monster, that monster would take 2 damage instead of 1 damage for every crit that I have rolled. So that's how military production works. Now, I will say, and this is important, and this is true of all of them, you decide the order of how things happen. So I could, for example, I could build 3 ships, I could go move, then I could spend 1 and move a ship and attack. And maybe when I attack, I lose a couple ships, so I go back to my the well, and I spend 2 more military production to build that fleet back up again and add 2 more ships. So, I could add ships and battle and then add ships, or I could add all the ships and then battle, or I could battle and then add ships. Any order you want to do things, it's up to you. Key thing to remember, and it reminds you because it's in red, is if you activate a fleet and move it, even if you just activate a fleet and don't move it, you could do that as well. Like let's first say, for example, that I was in this empty sector, and I should show you that right now as well. So I'm in this empty sector already, but I still need to spend an action to activate that fleet. That's why it says move 0 to 1. I'm not moving, I'm just activating it. And I'm going to choose to explore. When you explore, you're going to take one of these star tokens, and these will be on your player board to start each age. You should have 3 of them, unless you're the Martians, and you would have 4. And I'm going to place it on that space that I've explored. Now, any player can explore a space that another player has already explored. You cannot explore a space you have already explored, unless you're the Martians. They have a special ability. Also, the stars are important because there are some objectives that, state whoever explores the most by the end of the game scores victory points. So it's important that you know who's explored where. So when you explore, I'm going to show you how the Explore works now. You're going to draw a card from the Explore deck, and I'll do one right now. So, and you're going to read it out loud. So we have vault found on asteroid. So you found a vault on an asteroid in that sector. So you have some choices here. You have 3 choices. Your first choice is leave the artifact in the vault. The artifact is rumored to be cursed. If you do that, you gain a tactics card. So you're going to get a benefit if you choose that one. And most of them are beneficial. The second one you can see here is keep an artifact found in the vault. So if I keep the artifact instead of leaving it there, I gain 3 technology production immediately. So I would add that technology production right to my technology board. But if I choose that, I'm getting more stuff, but I have to place this card in the table in front of me and shuffle side quest R into the deck. And the side quests are easy to find because they've got these these yellow titles on the top. So you would find side quest R if you chose that one and shuffle it right into the tactics decks. That means it's going to come up later. And since, as part of that selection, you have to place this card in front of you, when that comes out of the deck again, something's going to happen and it's going to impact you. It could be good, it could be bad, who knows? You'll learn this over time, but we will have more tactics decks available in the future. We've got 2 right out of the gate. All right, selection 3. Sell the loot to other civilizations. So if you do that, you place this card on the table in front of you and shuffle side quest R into the deck. So this one, you're really not getting anything, right? But you'll see the third thing here says once per game, if another player wants to trade the artifact, you both gain 2 technology production and they gain this card. So this is kind of, if you choose this one, it's a way for you to start gaining production as that artifact is traded and sold around to other players. So those are your choices. Do you want to try to turn it into a way to get technology production for the rest of the game? Do you want to get 3 technology production right now and shuffle a side quest into the deck? This has a side quest as well. Or do you want to just, not deal with the side quest and gain a tactics card? So all these explore cards are very different and they add a lot of theme to the game. And you have to make decisions. There's always an option to get something good. You're always going to get something good unless you get greedy. If you get greedy and shuffle side quests in, they could come back and hurt you. But there are ways to mitigate that as well. So that's the explore function of activating a fleet, which you do with military. Attacking, I showed you how to attack. You would roll dice, count your hits. So if you're attacking another player, player is either going to win or they're going to lose, or you could both destroy each other. All combat is simultaneous. So if I attack another player, we both roll all our dice and count our hits. And it could happen that we obliterated each other and, nobody's left. If only one player is left, they have won the battle and they now control that sector, right? Or a player could retreat as well. If a player retreats, they would move. So right here, like if I chose to retreat, I would move to any sector. But they're still going to get to shoot at me, right? I'm not able to roll my dice, but they still are. So they could destroy me completely in that case. If they do not kill all my ships, then my fleet is in that adjacent sector I chose to retreat to. So that's how that works. All right, so that is military. You're just building ships or you're activating a fleet and moving it. When you activate a fleet and move it, you get to explore. If it's an empty space, you get to colonize. If it's a planet. Now, to colonize, it's adding 1. You can only add 1. You cannot colonize a planet where you already have population. It's only a planet where you do not exist, where there is room, and you pay the cost to colonize. The last thing here is the civilization production. So the colonize, we've gone over colonization already. So I could actually take this action without activating a fleet. If my fleet was already here, I could choose to spend civilization, and I could spend 2 and add 1 without activating the fleet because my fleet is already there. All right, so that's something you can do. Also, if you choose civilization, you can populate. That lets me add population to a place where I already exist on the board where there is room. All right, so for example, I've got 1 here. I've already colonized these planets, but there's room. There's room for 2 more here, and there's 1 for 1 more there. So to populate, I would have to look at my board, and you can upgrade this and make it more efficient. My populate cost is 2 civilization production. So I would have to spend 2 to build 1, and then I could place that extra population on that planet. And that's important, again, because the next age, I'm going to get more production the more population I have on the board. So that's how you populate your planets and build them up. When you're maxed out on population, meaning your population equals the number on the planet, there are terraforming technologies that let you exceed that number. The last thing you can do is build a trade station. So a trade station lets you build 1 of your trade stations on an empty space, right, where you have a fleet. So I would have to say, for example, I had a fleet here, and let's say I had 2 civilization production left. I could spend these 2 and build a trade station. However, in order to build a trade station in an empty space, I have to have a fleet, but I also need to have this technology built. So this is a level 1 technology, so you can build it right out of the gate. But if I haven't built my trade stations technology, I cannot build a trade station. So that's something to keep in mind. So that's really the only thing on your list of actions here that you can't do right out of the gate. You can make most of these more efficient, but this build a trade station action, you have to actually get the technology before you can take that action. So that's basically all the actions you can do on your turn. The other thing is there's a free action you can take, and that means you can do it at any time. And it just says that I can trade 2 of any type of production for 1 of any other type of production. So let's say there was a vote, and I wanted to cast a vote, and I wanted to bid 2 political production because I know if I do that, I'm going to win a title, for example. So I could spend, 2 here to make 1, and I take one of these, and that converts to 1 of any type I want as well. So it's not really efficient, but it's a way for you to get the production type that you need if you don't have it. So that's always available to you as well. So that's all the actions you can take in the Silver River. Very important to make sure you're working towards your objectives, both the public and the personal objectives, and you're going to do that by taking these actions in the most efficient way. All right, so we're going to talk about the domestic investment track, and this is a pretty important part of the game. So as you look, you've already gone through the production phase, the governing phase, the action phase. An important thing here is the domestic investment track. And this is the reason you really want to be efficient and try to spend all your production as quickly as possible. You want to take the least amount of turns possible to take advantage of domestic investment track. So when you pass, first of all, if you are the first person to pass, you are going to get the first player marker. So you will get this token right here. That means you're the first player. That means during the next age, you go first. But also you get to take one of your cubes. There's a score track here that you keep your score with your color cube. But I also get to take one of my cubes and put it on any one of these 4 domestic investment tracks. These represent you building up your home worlds. You're providing support and programs for your populations. You're not expanding and colonizing. So we have the arts, we have infrastructure, we have education, and we have social programs. So let's, for example, say I choose social programs. I would put it there. Now, whenever I put a cube on a spot or move a cube up a spot, I gain the resource shown on that spot. So if I put it here, I will gain a civilization production. So that means I would immediately put one of my cubes there. Actually, I'm going to put it down here in the carryover section. So if I moved here, I get that type of production, and it goes right on my board for the next stage. So after you pass, you're going to be gaining production every time it comes back around to you. So you're putting pressure on the other players to hurry up, right? This is an AP killer. It makes people speed up the game. And it was one of our goals with the Silver River is to make a fast 4X. Not a light 4X, but a fast 4X. So let's say I did that and it went around the table and it came back to me again. Maybe some other players continue to take actions on the board. It comes back to me again. Now I have a choice. I can move up on a track where I already exist. So if I did that, I would gain a political production. You can see the symbol right there. But maybe I don't. Maybe I say, you know what? I'm going to get on another track. I'm going to go here and get a military production. Maybe I do that because I need a military production. Or maybe I'm doing it because I'm trying to position myself to maximize the victory points I'm going to gain from domestic investment at the end of the game. And I'll go through it with you right now. So the first thing says you'll earn 3 VP for every track where you're the highest, right? So if I am the highest person on a track, let's say it ended up like this, and we had 3 other players, and they were like that. I'm the highest on this track. I score 3 points for that track. So if I was the highest on all 4 tracks, I would score 3, 6, 9, 12. That's, of course, very hard to do, but it's a possibility. Also, and this is important, if I get all 4 cubes on the board, meaning I get a cube on all 4 tracks. Let's say it ends up like this. It won't be more than that. Let's say it's like this. So if it's like that, I'm also going to score points equal to my lowest track. So you have to get a cube on all 4 tracks. If you do, whatever is the lowest, you're going to score victory points equal to the lowest track, which would be, in this case, 3. If it was here, I would score 4, right? So that's another way you're going to score victory points from domestic investment. Also, you'll see there are some victory point icons on the board. So if I hit that, I'm going to score bonus 1 victory point for getting to that level or higher for each of them. So you'll see this one is much higher than this one. So you'll get to the extra victory point bonus on the top track easier than this one. However, you'll see along the way there's a bunch of raw production, which you don't really see elsewhere, right? So, and raw production is more valuable because you're going to be able to convert that to anything, any kind of production you want during that production phase in the next age. Or, I'm sorry, during the governing phase. So that's why, this is a little further up, but on the path to get there, you're getting a little bit extra because you're getting raw production and not production that's tied down. So that's the domestic investment track. You also have your score track on this board and an age tracker. So the Silver River, you only play 4 ages. So after everybody passes, that age is over. You move this up, right? And that's actually the 4th phase, is the last person passes. That means the age is over. You move the tracker. That's the only thing you do in the 4th phase, is move this tracker up to the next stage. Then whoever has the first player token, right, is going to take the first action in the next age, but everybody starts back doing the production phase and the governing phase, and then the first player takes their action, and it goes clockwise around the table until the last player passes. Then it goes to the next stage, do the same thing, and then the final age. So at the end of when the last person passes in the final age, game is over and you count your points, and whoever has the most points is the winner. All right, I'm going to talk about monster combat. So you can always fight a monster in the middle of the board in Sagittarius A. And let's, for example, here's a monster card here. Let's say we're fighting Garlax, the Devourer of Worlds. So the important thing is you have to move in to a sector that has a monster to attack it. If I do that, I can choose not to attack. If you choose not to attack, the monster is not going to attack you, right? These sectors represent very large areas of space. So you're able to avoid the monster. But if you want to engage it, it's a fight to the death. You're going to either win and get a lot of stuff and points, or you're going to lose. Whoever instigates the fight, meaning whoever goes into the sector and says, I'm fighting this monster, will get a certain number of victory points. You can see here it says after the battle. So the active player gets 2 VP. So when I attack a monster, here's how it's going to work. I'm going to walk you through a monster card. There's the monster's name and the artwork, of course, the level the monster is. And the back, you're going to see little dots on the edges. That indicates the monster's level as well. So that's a level 1 monster. This is a level 5 monster, much more powerful. And so those are there just to help you, sort the cards easier. That's all that is. So in this case, the battle rules, you follow them exactly, is all the players attack. If Garlax lives, he does 2 damage to each fleet and does an additional damage to each fleet that does not have a tactics card in hand. So if you're fighting this monster and you have no tactics cards, he's going to do extra damage to you. So you'll see it says players. That's because, and I'm going to show you, let me get on a sector over here so I can show you a little better. So let's say Garlax was here, and there are ways a monster can come into another space besides the center. So let's say I move in here to fight him. At that point, I'm going to read the battle rules to all the players. Now, this is a level 1 monster, and you'll see how many hit points it takes to kill on the bottom based on the number of players. So I could read that. If I fight it alone, it's 7 hit points. However, any player adjacent to this sector can move in and join me. I get the victory points. They do not. However, anybody that participates, if we win and they have a ship remaining, they're going to get the rewards as well. So you'll see in this case, we all have to return our fleets to our homeworlds, but we get a tactics card and 3 military production. So if they moved in and survived and fought the monster with me, the green player, they would get a tactics card and 3 military production. And then we would both move our fleets back to our homeworlds. In addition, I would get the 2 victory points, but only the leader gets the victory points. So that's important to know. Now you'll also see this level 1 monster has a card icon on the bottom right that says 0. That means we don't draw any monster special abilities. I'll show you the monster special abilities. As the monsters go up in level, like for example, level 5 monster, you're drawing 4 of them. Most of them make the monster much more powerful. So this one you'll see is advanced. If the monster is advanced, each player must discard a technology production or roll 2 less dice. All right, so you're going to lose technology production, or it's going to be much more difficult to beat that monster. Some of them are end of round cards. Like this one is super reflexes. If a monster has super reflexes, it destroys a ship in every player's fleet for every circle that they roll. So if when I attack the monster, every circle I roll, it could still hit the monster. If my fleet technology says I hit on circles, it's still going to be a hit to the monster, but it's also going to be an extra hit to me. There are other things. I'm going to find one. There's a couple that actually help the players. Here's one. Most of them help the monsters, but a couple can help the players. This is a weakness. So if the monster has weakness, it's ongoing, you immediately defeat this monster if you roll 5 circles in 1 attack round. So drawing this card is great because it means the monster's not stronger, for 1, but 2, it gives you another way to defeat it, which is kind of cool. So before any adjacent player decides to come in, you have to reveal those cards. So whoever is the leader has to take on more risk, especially for higher level monsters, because you don't really know how powerful it's going to be until you see those cards. Every other player sees the cards and can then decide if they're going to help you or not. And another thing to remember is you can sandbag people. Let's say this fleet was a fleet that only had 1 ship in it, for example. They could move in knowing they're going to lose, but knowing that now instead of having to do 7 hit points in damage, they have to do 11, right? So you made it harder on this player. So that's something you need to be on the lookout for as well. So that's how the monster battles work. Great way to score victory points. Great way to get resources and other rewards. But it's risky and it can get difficult at higher levels, especially if you're not cooperating with other players. So that's it. That is the Silver River. I hope you enjoyed this kind of walkthrough of the game. And if you have any questions, just leave a comment. I'll be glad to answer them. Thanks.